hold to the belief of this mystical subterranean world of inner earth, believing it to be a place of wonder and tranquility, or the vast opposite. But we have to wonder where these cultures and where these religions have received this secret esoteric knowledge from. Many of these religions involve mystics who will channel spirit guides, opening their bodies up as vessels for demonic possession. In these channeling sessions, the entities will speak mysteries to the person involved, or will take over the body completely to perform what is known as automatic writing. In these events, the writings many of the mystics produce is actually a demonic entity writing out the information through the host. And the information is so mind-blowing, and it draws people into a deep supernatural experience, deceiving them into a mystic lie, all the while blinding them from the truth of Jesus Christ and His plan for the redemption of mankind. And so it's no surprise that people are fascinated with the Hollow Earth, based on the fact that they want to experience the mystical facade of this spiritual projection. This would explain why countless people and governments alike have sought out on inner Earth expeditions in their search for truth. But what are some of the explorations that involve actual evidence? Going back into the 1930s, we find something really bizarre that was published in the LA Times on Monday, January 29th, 1934. The article talks about a subterranean city, or a catacomb city, with lizard people inhabitants and a hidden treasure. Apparently, a geophysical mining engineer had sunk a shaft right beneath Fort Moore Hill, and he discovered an amazing network of subterranean tunnel systems and a lost city with artifacts and evidence of an advanced civilization of lizard people. The article not only breaks down details of this lost city, but also provides a map of the catacomb city as well. And then it connects the lizard people to certain beliefs of the Native American Indians. So Los Angeles, or the City of Angels, specifically has direct ties to ancient serpent-like entities, and this was mainstream public information back in the 30s. And this event in Los Angeles seems to have sparked a movement of treasure hunters and explorers in the region, because actual evidence was presented in the media. Now, we've mentioned a class of beings a few times now, which many refer to as reptilians. Reptilians, serpent people, lizard people, and so on. I used to have a hard time with this until I got more familiar with Genesis chapter 6 and the conspiracy of the fallen angels to create their hybrid offspring. Seraphim angels, also known as burning serpents or fiery serpents, have what we would explain as serpentine qualities. And therefore, when they took wives of the women of earth, their offspring were part serpentine as well. This is just basic science and genetics. Now, Gary Wayne, author of Genesis 6 Conspiracy, has explained how the first generation offspring of seraphs and human women were documented as having snake or viper-like qualities, especially in the face. And their descendants inherited some of these qualities as well. Going into the research of the giants, we see elongated skulls with snake-like jaw structures, which clearly backs this idea up with historical relics. So when the accounts of these lizard or snake people arise, I honestly can't fathom why any explorers would ever want to get that close to them, even in search for treasure, especially going back in California in the 1930s. And if Los Angeles has historic connections to fallen angels and subterranean cities, it makes perfect sense why it's known as the City of Angels. And it makes perfect sense also why the satanic mind control system of Hollywood would be strategically birthed in that same location. But some of the most notable expeditions of the Hollow Earth seem to carry us into the realm of the Nazis in Antarctica. The Nazis were not only keen on obtaining the most powerful occult relics and manuscripts, but they were also emphatic in their search for the inner Earth.
The Nazis did have a vast interest in looking for an opening to a Hollow Earth. It was actually a prophetic part of their whole belief system, that they were destined someday to be reintroduced through an opening of the Hollow Earth to a pure-bred race that was part of what they were as being the diluted race on the surface. There was a purebred race. This goes back to Helena Blavatsky and her book, Secret Doctrine.
The Nazis knew through all of the arcane, hidden, and occultic knowledge that there were underground cities and civilizations still functioning in their power.
the Nazis knew about this stuff. And they did they did mount expeditions to travel the planet looking for artifacts, looking for talismans, looking for the old gods.
In 1938, the Germans began planning an expedition to Antarctica. At the beginning of 1939, a Nazi expedition finally explored what was at the time an uncharted area of the Arctic. By foot and by plane, the Nazis had surveyed a particular area that they were interested in, clearly with a secret agenda. They called it New Schwabenland.
New Schwabenland was in the Antarctic, and it was based on the name of the ship, the New Schwabia, which was the exploration ship. The amount of information in antiquity concerning Antarctica is so voluminous, even back to the 1537 Parry-Rees map that showed Antarctica without ice.
Now we're told that Antarctica is one of the harshest climates in the world. It is one of the coldest, it is one of the driest and windiest places on the planet. In the winter months, temperatures can get as low as -73 degrees Celsius. This seems to be an odd place for the Nazis or for anyone to be surveying for that matter, until we remember back to the allegations that there is an entrance there at the South Pole, an entrance that leads right into the Hollow Earth. And many people believe that if it weren't for the Nazis' success in their Arctic expedition, then World War II might have never happened.
What's critical is that the Nazis found an entity or a civilization that was ruled by, quote-unquote, the king of the earth.
Within the same time frame, the Nazis had used political persuasion to explore Tibet and search for Shambhala and its occult enlightenment. We have to remember that the Nazis were on a constant search for all things occult. And with all the legends about Shambhala being the capital of the inner earth and having a supernatural entity for a king, this was a major part of their occult checklist.
The Nazi expedition to Shambhala originally started in Greenland with the Edda. The Edda were ancient Nordic writings describing a hollow earth. They went there to see if they could find further details or information. This was the top of their agenda. They had to find this opening. From the Edda, they went to an expedition to the Himalayan mountains. The Buddhist monks there, especially the Bonpo sect of Buddhist monks, greeted the Nazis as being a fulfillment of their own prophecies, that there would be a group that would be basically a negative part of a spiritual power, but they were going to be the ones to finish off the fifth Dharma cycle. In other words, there's a cycle of the world coming to a pinnacle point, and then it is destroyed and then rebuilt in a new world. So they saw the Nazis as being the ones that were going to accomplish all of their hopes and expectations. They opened up the cavernous systems within the Himalayas, where they allegedly spoke and had contact with the inner chiefs, what Blavatsky called the secret chiefs, the White Brotherhood. They claimed, yes, they're real. We come in contact with them regularly. So they took them, allowed the Nazis to go in places that they had actually cordoned off from the rest of the world for centuries. They also let them do some Earth electromagnetic testing and with their equipment and everything. And it was right after that they went back. They took actually 200 members of the Bonpo sect and made them SS officers, brought them back to Velisberg Castle under Heinrich Himmler, and then were like a scientific think tank working with the Nazi SS Ahnenerbe to locate where this opening was. It was announced very shortly after that in Der Spiegel, the main news magazine in Germany, that they had discovered the location of the opening to a hollow earth. And the next thing you know, they had the New Schwabenland expedition to the Queen Maud Land area of the Antarctic, and then the rumors of a base 211, which there's enough of a paper trail that it really happened. It's what drove them. It was a religious belief that drove them to cordon this area off and claim it for their own.
After the war, the mainstream was declaring Hitler's death, but the evidence supports the contrary, that he had actually escaped and made his way to Antarctica, and by some accounts, he had stopped off in Argentina first. But Hitler was not alone. There were nearly 1 million Nazis that made it safely to an inner Earth base in their previously charted territory in Antarctica, according to researchers.
Of course, after World War II, the official narrative that was published by the press was that Adolf Hitler and the ranking members, the senior members of the Nazi Party were killed or were captured. But the truth is that some of the most senior members, including Bormann and Hitler, didn't die. They disappeared. And there's reason to believe, including the recently disclosed vault material from the FBI, that Hitler and some of these other ranking Nazi members actually made it to South America, specifically to Argentina. Some accounts even recall him being in Peru. What's interesting about that, what's very provocative about that in my mind, is that that relates to the Shinkana. Because the Catholic Church, who smuggled a lot of the Nazis out of Europe to South America, knew about the Shinkana, and not only knew about it, had access to it for hundreds of years. And there are plenty of legends that connect the underground world beneath the Andes to other parts of the earth. I believe that there is a direct connection between the underworld of the Shinkana and what is under Antarctica to the south. Because the Shinkana extended from Peru into Bolivia, into Chile and Argentina, probably out under the ocean all the way to whatever is frozen under the ice in Antarctica. So it's very possible that there was an active tunnel system that the Nazis were utilizing that could be accessed in South America through the legendary Shinkana.
The Nazis were articulate in records keeping. They kept track of everything. These people seemed to disappear right off the face of the earth. All throughout the war, before the war, during the war, and even after the war, submarines were going down to the area of Neuschwabenland. They had strange payloads where a crew that should normally be 8-12 people had 50 people in it. So there was a slow process of a migration, I believe, going down to Base 211 in the Antarctic. At the very end of the war, the entire German Reichstag Bank disappeared. That doesn't happen by accident, that's by design. General Donitz said that they, in case the war would take a turn for the worst, they already had secured a fortress within the depths of the ice in the south, alluding probably to the Base 211. So I mean, there's so much evidence that there was a migration that was going on during, before, and even after the war.
Now, in this 1 million Nazis that mysteriously disappeared at the closing of the war, we hear allegations that this group was made up of the most educated and powerful thinkers and doers of the Nazi Party. We are talking scientists, doctors, occult magicians, and more. But the evidence of this Arctic Nazi exodus following the war is even more compelling when we factor in Operation High Jump.